Howdy folks, this is Tony here, and in this brief video, I want to discuss the psychology behind the election denial debate and just sort of delve a little bit deeply into why people are turned off by talking about election denial. Now, I want to start by saying I am not here to accuse any particular candidate of election denial in this particular video. I'm going to try to keep it as neutral and judgment-free as possible because I want everyone in America to be able to have a civilized conversation about this without it getting violent for any reason. So, let's first start by acknowledging that there is election denial on both sides of the spectrum. When Trump won in 2016, you had a lot of people, Hillary Clinton included, who accused him of colluding with Russia in order to gain the presidency falsely. Likewise, in 2020, you had a lot of people blaming Biden's presidency on mail-in ballots as well as swing states committing what they would say is election fraud and things of that nature. So both sides distrust the system. This whole idea that only Democrats trust the system and Republicans don't trust it, that's false. The idea of only Republicans trust the system and Democrats don't trust it, that's false as well. Neither side trust the system right now, and that's a big problem, and we need to have some serious reform in order to get around that. And that is why I think that we should make it illegal to have ballot counting go into the next day. There should be a cutoff point where 2 hours after the polls close, you should announce a winner, and if you can't count the ballots in that time, then you need to be fined. You need to have some sort of investigation going on so that you can actually make your systems efficient. You should never have to wait for the next day to figure out who the winner is, because that is a bunch of stress and anxiety that is thrown upon the American people, and both sides are going to get restless. If there's a recount and the Republican wins, Democrats cry foul. If there's a recount and the Democrat wins, Republicans cry foul. We need to have a smooth system where you know in 2 hours after the polls close who won, no questions asked whatsoever. If your mail can arrive on time, and if your Amazon package can arrive on time, there's no reason why your candidate cannot get victory or defeat on time. We need to have a more efficient system. But let's delve into the psychology of it. What you basically have are two phenomena at play that cause people to not want to discuss this issue or cause people to get hostile or defensive whenever you mention election denial. The first one is called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is where you tend to seek out sources of information that confirm what you already believe. So if you are a Democrat, you want to watch CNN where they're talking about Trump is bad, he's an insurrectionist, any candidate that says 2020 was stolen is a terrorist or something like that. You want to believe that, you go seek out news that confirms that. Meanwhile, if you're a conservative, you're going to go to Gateway Pundit where they're talking about, oh, Trump's going to be reinstated by the summer or something, like that. You have people who are genuinely unwilling to sit down together and have a civilized discussion about it. And I think that is where we are having problems, because I feel as though if people could sit down, have a civilized discussion, actually think their ideas through, and actually have a good conversation, we might actually get somewhere as a country. Because I think we can all agree that when you have elections taking 2 weeks to decide, or a week or 3 days to decide, that doesn't look right. You should know right then and there. Think about, again, when we were in high school, you wanted your grade then and there. You didn't want the teacher to make you wait forever to find out how you did on the test, because you kind of felt cheated of that gratification, of that confirmation of how you did. We need to have that confirmation in our country. The second phenomenon that's at play here is something called normalcy bias. Normalcy bias is when the brain tries to protect itself against high levels of stress by ignoring things that are stressful. That's normalcy bias in a nutshell. As an example, if you have a check engine light come on in your car, oh, it's because it's cold outside. Oh, it's just because it was raining. Like, you come up with all of these excuses why that's acceptable, rather than saying, you know what, I'm having a problem with my car. The repair might be expensive, but whatever, I need to face it head on. I need to, look at my engine, plug the scanner in, or take it to a mechanic who knows what he's doing. Instead of doing all that, you might come up with an excuse as to why that issue does not need to be addressed. So if people from whatever side of the aisle say that there was fraud in that election, or say that that candidate's illegitimate, you don't want to imagine that, because it's stressful. It is stressful for you, the idea that the almighty United States government, and I say almighty in air quotes, that the almighty United States government, who can freeze anyone's account, who can spy on anyone's phone, who can throw anyone in jail that it wants to, who can try to take the life of anyone that it wants to, that government that's proven itself so powerful time and time again, you as an American citizen, those of you who don't like to talk about election fraud on either side, you don't want to imagine a government that could ever cheat its own people. Because if the government can cheat its own people, what stops it from doing worse to you? You don't want to think about the government trying to harm you because, again, that's a very stressful thought. And so you want your confirmation bias. You want to go back to your normal. You want to go back to your Netflix, back to your video game, back to your television, back to your going to the mall, or we don't use malls anymore, or shopping on Amazon, excuse me. You want to go back to the things that comfort you and not think about the things that make you uncomfortable. And so that's why whenever someone brings up an election integrity issue, your first thought is, this person's crazy. Let me go back to watching whatever news channel brings me comfort. Let me go back to watching CNN if I'm liberal. Let me go back to reading something on Gateway Pundit if I'm conservative. And that's what ends up happening with people who have that kind of confirmation bias now, or normalcy bias and confirmation bias. So that's what I think the issue is. And that's what's stopping American people from being able to have a discussion. But no matter what side you're on, we can all agree on this. The United States has interfered with foreign countries' elections, have they not? Hasn't the United States interfered in places like, what is it? Was it Chile and Brazil and Iran? I mean, countries all over the Middle East, countries all over South America. The United States has interfered with their elections. That's indisputable fact. In fact, that's part of the reason why Iran hates the United States guts now, because we've interfered with their elections in the past. If the United States can interfere with foreign elections, what stops the United States from interfering with domestic elections? If they've proven it abroad, what stops them from bringing it here? Again, I'm not accusing any particular candidate of fraud. That'll be for the lawyers and for the courts and for the people of that particular state to decide that issue. Because remember, according to the Constitution, powers not given to the federal government or to the state government are reserved to the people. So what stops ordinary citizens from forming election integrity boards that have constitutionally backed power? Just saying. So, Democrat or Republican, don't care. We can all agree that you should know the very night who won, and that there should be no waiting until the next day, because that kind of suspense could have national security implications. If other countries don't know who the leader is going to be, what stops them from trying to affect us in that time interval or something of that nature? We need to always be efficient and consistent. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, we can all agree about that. So all of that to say that I think that part of the healing process for this country is just having the courage to go in those stressful spaces in your mind. If you're a conservative, having the mental courage to talk about, well, maybe that Democrat did win or didn't win. You know, we don't know yet. Let's talk about it. If you're a Democrat, maybe that Republican is legitimate or isn't legitimate. Let's talk about that. I think when we try to avoid stress by pushing the issue off, all that does is make the other side feel ignored and make it feel worse. So all of that to say, we need very strongly, and I don't care what side you're on, we need very strongly to have laws in place that forbid elections from going to the second and third and fourth day, because that is just doing us a disservice as a nation. We are Americans, and we can do better than that.